Hello, everyone. So, welcome to Spiritual Astrology. And um, today I wanted to explain to you guys something that I think is very important in spiritual astrology itself. So, not just astrology, but the spiritual aspect of it. And it's not necessarily a spiritual thing, it's just a deeper level to astrology. So, some people may call it esoteric astrology, depending on, what kind of what kind of view you have on astrology. So, what I'm getting at here is a specific branch and kind of astrology that's deeper. So, what I've started to believe in the last few years, because I grew up having a fascination and obsession with astrology, is that astrology in itself, the thing that kind of sparks most people's interest, is honestly if you have an intellectual aspect. So, not necessarily if you have an air sign in your birth chart, but generally this is kind of what sparks astrology, unless you kind of get someone else to show you. Books were actually what got me into astrology because intellectually I was extremely fascinated by astrology itself. So when I started reading these books, I got drawn in intellectually to this. And it's just like any mathematician or anyone that gets interested in something like that becomes an obsession of the mind. So here I'm just going to share with you something that I've started to believe in and started to kind of experience in my own life. So I'm going to get more into the topic of experience because everyone has their own personal experience, which can be viewed through your astrology chart. But you are the only person that can look at your own birth chart and resonate with it. And you're the only one that can completely understand it and use it in a personal way. So if you're not at this level or able to do that, this video is just a spark to get you to kind of look at your chart at another level and kind of just really let it sink in, because I've been reading so many other people's charts, but it's so fascinating to just be able to go back and look at your own birth chart and see the depth to it, the different levels, and see, wow, that's myself. Okay, I get that. And you're gonna always be learning, I think, like how I am always learning. And there are really intuitive astrologers, and that is the highest level, the more spiritual, intuitive level of reading a birth chart. So that's kind of what I believe I'm kind of learning in this life. But in my opinion, I've met so many different people of all signs of the zodiac, but I honestly have seen different signs and different placements are kind of more important to your ability to kind of see people. So from what I understood, fire and air signs have a different view on astrology. Um, so Libra, I find, or anyone with a planet in the seventh house, kind of has a very good understanding of other people. It's like they can possess another person, and very good kind of balance between them. Or rather, that's their goal in life. It's what they're automatically good at. So that's what the sun gives you. It's your talent. It's your ego. You may not completely resonate it with all the time, and I think when you reach 30 and after, that's when your sun starts to shine. So I've noticed a lot of Libras, at least with me, maybe it could be my chart that I connect with, but have the ability personally to be good at this stuff. Generally, a Libra won't be fascinated in astrology because I find Virgo rules over the Libra unconscious. And this gives Libra the ability to see things in such a good way that Libra actually is so intuitive, but Libra chooses to sit there and weigh out the options, and that's what it's supposed to be learning and going through this life. Now, an Aries is automatically intuitive, so if you have an Aries astrologer, they'll be someone that's very much able to read something in a quick way and kind of look at a birth chart, but there'll be less depth. I find with a Libra, if a Libra can finally trust their ability and their seventh house energy, and anyone with a seventh house sun or moon has that automatic ability. So what I'm trying to get at here is that I think that those kind of energies are give you the ability and gift, if you want to call it. It's all about language basically, to see a chart in a different way. So the different planets and different houses in a chart are very important, and they have an immense amount of depth to them. So I get really kind of annoyed when people look at it, pick up a book and they read it about a planet or a sign or a house, and they read just the basic level. But I believe everyone's at their own place. So you can look at a birth chart and say, okay, this is the fourth house. That is about family and home. Okay, so your home if it's ruled by Cancer, let's just put its natural sign there, then you're going to have a very loving, supportive, protective home. That's the kind of Cancer energy. It's emotional, and it's emotional and intelligent because it has Gemini to back it. So that's just one level. You might think that that's complicated, but it isn't. That's just one level of looking at the fourth house. The fourth house, in an esoteric level, and from what I understand, and even in Vedic astrology, can symbolize the base. It's your unconscious. It's the ability for you to have birth and to be taken away. So in my view, the fourth house is the womb that you came out of, and the 12th house and 8th house kind of rule this afterlife as well. The fourth house also rules the afterlife, but it's your beginnings, it's your roots. So I have a friend, as an Aquarius rising. See, this is why you have to experience it yourself, because you may be an astrologer, and when you have those aha moments, I think that's something that might be coined by Oprah. But an aha moment is like you're hanging out with a friend and you realize they have something different from you. So how I've learned astrology is looking at opposites. Without that ability to see differences, I couldn't have been able to find the intellectualness. And that's why air signs love differences. They see the opposite. There's like, that's me, that's you. This is my childhood neighborhood, but that is a faraway place. So that's the first house is yourself, the seventh house is someone else, the third house is your childhood, and the ninth house, well, the third house is your childhood home and your neighborhood and everything around you and kind of the environment that you put yourself in, that you interact with, that you communicate with. The ninth house is faraway travel. But once you start kind of playing with this ability, it's fun. Like, it's an intellectual kind of fun thing to do. So if you have an air sign in your chart, this is how, as an astrologer, I can teach you to do this, because this is what I've done. And it's also because I'm a Capricorn and I'm very practical. So the ability to have an air and earth with me is the practical use of the intellectual pursuit of astrology. Now there's the water signs that I find are more intuitive or mediumistic. It's honestly just about feeling in the moment. I find water people they're so able to clear their energy. They pick up on everything around them, of course, but they can clear it and kind of sit in a moment. Now, fire sign can do this, but they're less, their consciousness is just so quick. So fire sign will just be really quick with their consciousness, but their unconscious is ruled by water, which is amazing. It connects you to the universe. It's where everything is in the same place and everything's everywhere and it doesn't matter. So water kind of separates you from your body and the physical world and day-to-day tasks generally, especially Virgo and Pisces. But anyway, I'm rambling. So if you have different planets in your chart, it really explains your ability to be an astrologer and your ability to see other people's charts. But if you're not able to look back at your own chart and kind of ground yourself in who you are, then you need to find some balance in your life. I know I personally do, and it depends on what chart you have. But if you have anything kind of seesawing in your chart, so the issue with me is I have things in my 10th and 11th, but also in my 4th and my 5th. So actually, like, person that helped me understand this was Alyssa Sharp, and I'm still learning from her videos, and it's really interesting. And I do believe that her ability comes from a lot of different things in her chart. It's amazing. And with me, I have that, and it's just really cool. It's kind of a way, when you're born, you kind of look around and you see different people. Like a Gemini might be like, this is my body, that's your body, this is my hand, that's your talent, that's my talent. Cool. Like, it's the ability to kind of compare yourself. So that is what the air houses do. So the 3rd, the 7th, and the 11th kind of let you see through another person's eyes and still give back to yourself. But air signs and people with a lot of planets in these houses kind of find it difficult to learn this because they're still learning. So they have to kind of deal with it. They're always having to compromise, always having to react. So reaction is not a good thing, but your mind will make you react. So spiritually, if you go on your request and move forward, you separate yourself from your mind because your ego and your mind are very addictive. So even with people that don't have addictions, per se, with caffeine or alcohol or methamphetamines, I don't know, whatever, you can rise above those addictions and you can also rise above your mind, but it's not easy. To know thyself is very, very much an important thing, and to be able to sit still and just kind of be calm kind of puts you at your center, accepts who you are, without judging it with your mind, or rather your ego, the sun, in my opinion, and the mind, Moon and Mercury. So Moon, Mercury, and the Sun are very low energy. They're low on the ladder of kind of advancement. So they're not. It's not that they're unimportant, because you definitely have to accept your moon sign. It's your base. Because of it's your kind of unconscious way of thinking. It's how you automatically think and feel and react when you were born. So it's a very animalistic and primal place. If you don't accept your moon sign, and if it doesn't get along with your sun or rising sign, that's an issue. So you can kind of tell in someone if they're repressing their sun, if they haven't accepted their sun. There's a lot of places in your chart that could be kind of like hidden zones or like potholes. And in order to dig them up, you have to kind of look at the angles in your chart. So one thing I like to do, that was kind of the main focus of this video, is to kind of look at the different houses in your birth chart and compare them. And I've mentioned this before, but I kind of want to keep repeating it, because the first house is the first house. It's the self. It's kind of like a starting point. It is the starting point. It kind of shows your rising sign. It shows you how you see the world and how the world sees you. It's kind of how you relate to the physical world. If you didn't have that, it's just a good starting point for your map of life, because your whole 12th house is your life and kind of where you were put, and it's all in your, like, in your consciousness. So it's not necessarily that you are fated to have a bad life if you have certain placements, or if you have a bad rising sign or whatever, because there's no bad rising sign. The thing with rising sign is that I've learned, in my opinion, is that yes, some rising signs will give you a bad time, and you'll have bad energy coming from them. You might not like that rising sign, but that has a lot to do with your chart, because how you see the world is only how you see the world. I've had issues with fire signs my whole life because I have fire. It's because of my chart. But some of my other air sign friends, and I have a lot of air in my chart, which makes me kind of like defensive against fire. It's my mind. It's my mental. I have Mercury conjunct the Sun, and I have Gemini Moon, and Aquarius rising. Spiritually, I've learned that this makes me kind of less egocentric. I'm not in myself, I'm in my mind. So it can become an addiction, because once you get into this, and this is how I got into astrology, but the ability to kind of separate your mind from yourself, because yourself is not your mind. You may have Mercury or the moon conjunct your sun, or you may have Mercury conjunct your rising sign. So you act out this mentalness. You act out this ability to be quick. Mercury is all about quickness. It's about doing things. It's about the mundane world. It has its place. It has its place because, let me just kind of give you like a good example of what Mercury is to me. Mercury is waking up, like Mercury in a day. It's waking up, go getting your coffee, spilling the coffee, wiping it up because you have to. It's being fastidious. It's quickly fixing your errors, noticing all the things around you, reacting to your mind, your body, reading the newspaper, getting your local input, going out and saying hi to your neighbors, smiling, maybe not smiling, but just kind of, it's very mental. It's very down to earth. It's all these facts. It's full of facts. It's full of knowledge. So when Mercury does this, it kind of affects your chart. You need to kind of see, the sun is important, but if Mercury is close to your sun, which it most likely is, decently close, then you will identify with your mind. You'll identify with how you act in the world. You'll identify with all these mundane things. It's a quick mind, and I find people with strong Mercury are spiritual people, but they're mentally spiritual, and it's hard for them to separate from it. Someone who's truly spiritual on a spiritual path may have different planets in their chart, maybe Uranus or Neptune. It's depending. Anyone can be spiritual. But if you have a strong Mercury, you're going to be so attached to your own mind. It's going to be very hard for you to kind of actually see other people's opinions. So what I've learned is that I'm able to take in information, and I have a strong Mercury. But because my Mercury is conjunct both my Sun and Saturn in the 12th, it's so deep in my mind. I'm so unconsciously attached to Mercury that basically I think I know what everyone's thinking, and I do. But once I start saying I know everything, or I know this, I know that, I think I know that, I think this, I think that, it detaches from my true sense of intelligence. So with spiritual books and spiritual teachers, they say the sun, your true self, the sun, has so much more intelligence in it. Mercury itself is just a small fragment. It's kind of, it attaches everything. So Mercury attaches your body to your mind, to your ego. It separates them. It defines them. It gives it meaning in the physical world. It helps you learn while you're in your body. But when you're caught up in this physical world, not asking yourself what the meaning of life is, telling yourself you know everything, getting lost in science, getting lost in your day-to-day life, it's can pretty much bog you down. But when you identify with this, maybe it's like a Gemini or a Virgo, you kind of start to kind of have the inability to understand people that have strong Jupiter, maybe like a Sagittarius or a Sagittarius rising or a Pisces rising. So these people have the ability to see the world in a fractal way. They're getting out of their body and seeing things in a spiritual way. So I have friends who are Virgos and that don't have those indicators in their chart that makes it easy for them to identify themselves with faith. So faith is something that faith, morals, and ethics are more ruled by Jupiter. So where Jupiter is in your chart defines everything. But like I was trying to mention earlier, I don't know if I did, I'm sorry if I didn't, but the houses are opposite different houses, right? So this is what makes things really interesting. Why I'm so fascinated with Libra in the seventh house is because it's opposite yourself. It kind of it shows you the illusion, because once you only know about yourself, you just think I'm myself and that's it. But then when you want to get insight into the illusion of the world, because your chart is your own illusion, and it's not a bad thing. You can definitely love your chart. It's yourself. It's how you're living in this life. Accept it. But it's the way you filter everything. It's your unconscious way of living. It's automatically your energies that you give out and they come back to you. So your houses are very important to this. Where they're placed, where the planets are, how they angle one another are very important. What it gets interesting is just to understand the houses. Say you look at a house and you read the qualities of that house, the part of life they're supposed to rule over. Some people have issues with understanding. I find more the 8th, 11th, and 12th houses. I think I get the 8th decently. I definitely understand the 12th because I've read a lot about it and I have a few planets in the 12th. The 12th is very close to me. I have planets in the 11th. The 11th is harder to understand, and I think it's because it's ruled by Aquarius. And Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, and Uranus is a high energy field. It's higher knowledge. It's like Mercury, but on another plane. So let's just talk about, say you met a Gemini, a really, really pure Gemini. They'll be the person that's very intellectual, witty, quick-minded, but they'll kind of be shallow. They don't want to skim further than, facts, these interesting tidbits of information. They'll get tickled by all this stuff. Say you run into an Aquarius, and this is where things get a bit more interesting. I love Aquarius. It's probably because it's my rising sign, and I have all this 11th energy Aquarius stuff. So an Aquarius is kind of able to take all that higher knowledge and the stuff that's in the spiritual world and kind of bring it down. So that's how an Aquarius and a Gemini get along, because they're very intellectual. But a Gemini might be like, oh, there's Aquarius again. I love you, but you're so silly, because they're not using things practically. And Aquarius isn't very practical because they don't want to be. Their unconscious is so practical. It's so Capricorn. It's so serious that they're serious underneath it all, but they don't want to be. They kind of want to shock you out of something. And then there's a Libra, who's very intelligent. So these abilities and these different types of intelligences, which I've mentioned in another video, are very important. But the air signs generally will be kind of detached and mental and experiencing life that way, whereas water signs experience life through kind of a blind haze, kind of. They'll take everything very personally, and they'll pride themselves in being personal. Now, a fire sign is subconsciously personal. So this brings up the ego. It's a very good place for the ego to grow. Now, spiritually, you may think, oh, ego's not a good thing. Now, this is a misconception, because ego is imperative. We need an ego. Everyone has an ego, but fire signs will generally have a healthier ego And this is a theory of mine, but fire signs have a healthy ego because they don't, it's all quick. They express it. They love it. They have fun. Air signs tend to take the ego and overthrow it. They blow it up. Gemini is the best one for this because it kind of goes on the surface and can still have fun. But Gemini is actually quite can Gemini energy can bleed into narcissism. And it doesn't mean that necessarily you, like, if you're a Gemini, you'll be narcissistic. But Donald Trump is a Gemini, but he does have Leo rising. But that combination, you know, you can tell that he's kind of egotistical. He in himself doesn't feel bad about it. Now take the sun and put it in Libra or Aquarius. And these are places that the sun isn't supposed to be necessarily happy in, right? If you get into exaltation, fall, and detriment, you'll notice. But the reason here is because these people's their egos is supposed to be for other people. So the sun is like, but this is the center of my universe, but my center of my universe is you. That means I have to wait around for you. Okay, well that's fine. And they'll keep telling themselves, that's fine, that's fine. I'll keep giving to you. That's okay. That's okay. And then Mars and the sun will get pissed off. So it depends where the Mars placement is and where the sun is and what the angles, but this is how repressed anger can be expressed. So air signs will generally have a concept of themselves in their mind, and they'll be proud of their mind. But they don't feel themselves enough. Like air signs aren't, if there's too much air in your chart, you can't get in your body and be happy with it. So I've learned through different astrologers like Deborah Silverman. Yeah, that's her name, right? Yeah. She tells you about balancing different elements in your chart. It's a very holistic, beautiful way of looking at it. So if you can kind of see, like I know one of my friends is too airy, and I'm an empath, right? When I'm around him, because my ego is so strong in my 12th house, which kind of makes it just really there, and my Venus is there too. So part of my ego trip and my ego problem is my inability to kind of separate myself from others. So when I'm around him, I know when he's angry, and he doesn't want to admit it. He's very able to not be okay. Like, he's very able to live in his head. But then I'm like, oh, but come on, you're just neglecting your body, and I feel it. You're neglecting that feeling. You're upset at that person. You don't know it. So it's just really difficult, and it puts me in a bad place where being an Aquarius rising, I start to sound, if I speak up about it, I start to sound, first of all, as an Aquarius rising, my shadow side, my Leo descendant, comes up, and I'm like, I sound like I know everything, and that's an Aquarius problem. So the ability for Aquarius to be humble is a huge thing, and Aquarius has that ability, but once it starts to realize that it's not its mind, it starts to really be spiritual. So Aquarius does have access to this knowledge, but other signs feel it. So the thing is that Leo is a spiritual being, but it doesn't know it is. And that's the innocence of Leo. Leo is such a child. Aries is a child. Sagittarius has a child mind. It's innocent. It has all these ideas, beliefs, ethics, morals, travel. Like, it's so beautifully innocent. And his shadow side is the air signs. So in this instance, they're going to sound kind of stupid compared to an air sign. And I know I'm being really blunt. That's a part of who I am, which is also a difficult thing for an air sign to accept. And it's really sad. And there's a lot of different sadnesses. I mean, being a Capricorn, I know all the negative part about being guilt tripping myself. It's just a really difficult in your own path to deal with. So everyone has their own thing. So say you have a planet in the summer houses, the house is the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th. Those houses are very innocent and kind of simple. Like, you need to, those people, I'm like, you have a beautiful energy. Like, you need to accept that, just to let go, because life wants to give a lot to you. You don't need to think a lot. You don't need to deal with other people. You need to look at your family and love them. And it may be very emotional because those 3 houses are very close to home. Very, very, very close. They are home. Like, the 4th is the house. The 5th is your children and how you value your home and your family. The 6th house is how you move out of your family, kind of start to look at how you're going to start to kind of look at how you look to other people. But the fifth house energy, the Leo house, is all about self expression and not expecting anything in return. But that's what a Leo has to learn. And someone with strong Leo energy has to learn that other people, you may be proud of yourself. That's okay. Other people may not be proud of you. That's okay too. So it's very innocent, and the sun is very like that. So the sun in your birth chart isn't just your core self, it's this beautiful energy. Like, you have to start looking at what self means, what like identity is, and kind of realizing that we are all different, yet we're all the same. We are all separate, yet we're all intimately connected. And it doesn't mean that that's contradictory. So the mind might say, okay, what does that mean? Explain it. Give it to me in a really good, rational way. Tell me why that is. But the deepest knowledge, like I said, is in your sun sign. So your sun sign tells you your deepest intelligence. And by intelligence, I don't mean knowledge or facts or this mercurial, even moon energy. The sun is deeper than that. It is intuition, knowing. Knowing is more important than thinking. So Gemini will say, I'm thinking. But until a Gemini knows things intuitively and can accept, which it probably can learn a lot from Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is so lucky. A Gemini might be like, why are you so lucky? But a Gemini is so lucky when it turns off its mind because it accesses its opposite sign. And this is how houses get really cool, because your opposite sign is so deep within you. Say you're an Aries, deep down you have such insight into Libra energy. Say you are a Pisces, deep down you have so much Virgo in you. So it's this weird balance, because one thing I've learned of being a Capricorn is that I'm not so different than Cancer. I am, and I can learn so much from them because they're on an opposite path, right? They're kind of going in a different way. They're the same person as me, but in a different way. Because a Cancer won't feel guilty about being themselves. A Capricorn will. Generally, that's the bad part of Capricorn. I know how it is to be completely unable to be proud of anything that I've ever done. And I could say that. And it's silly because I know my sun is in the 12th. And someone might have the sun in an opposite house and still have issues. So everyone has issues. That's an issue that I have to deal with, is that everyone has issues, and kind of accept it and help heal everyone. But not everyone is able to heal other people. It's not your path. Like I said, Cancer is opposite to Capricorn. So Cancer is caring, right? They're here to learn how to care. A Capricorn is careful. And you may think those words aren't different. Careful means just watching out for what's around you. Yes, and the only reason that Capricorn is so careful, so paranoid, so exact is because Cancer is their shadow. Cancer is so, so strong in their life. They see Cancer so clearly in that way that they have to be caring. They have to be so caring. And that they feel so much. Cancer will feel, but they'll be on the surface. More on the surface generally, depending on their chart. But a Cancer rising most likely will have that emotional personality. It'll be that mother figure. And then Capricorn will be on their other side. So Cancer has to accept that they aren't always going to be such a soft-hearted person. A Cancer rising will flip out and not like it. A Taurus will flip out and not like it. Believe me, I've known a lot of Tauruses. A Taurus person doesn't want that energy with them. But the reason why we are so lost and we're in our physical bodies, and why we're learning and why we're going through life, is because we have to